Guys, Ken Smith, KenSmithFishing.com. World headquarters, Zavala, Texas. A little toasty out here. So this is going to be video number 7 of the Albert Collins, Glen Freeman video. This is an interesting video. Most of this video we're idling and talking about crankbaits as well. I had a couple of questions from some prior videos and I wanted to answer. One of the questions was, what hook are these guys using on these big worms? Now this is a 4/0. That's what I call a J-bend hook. Now it's actually just an offset worm hook, but that's basically what they're throwing. That just a real basic hook, again with no bobber stopper. And another question I had was, what rods does Glen like, or was he using? And interestingly, that morning Glen showed up with only 3 rods, and I think he had 2 of one of these and 1 of the other. So I sent him a text and I said, hey, what's your rods here? And he says it's a 7'2". It's an LCL MGR rod. It's called a Magnum grass rod. And then he said the other one he really likes is the 7-foot TLCTMBR. It's the Magnum Bass 1. I've got several of those rods. He said those are my 2 favorites, kind of my go-to for most styles of fishing. So those are the 2 rods that he's using most of the time. Obviously he's probably got as many of them or more than I do, but that's the rod he's using. So this is a good video. I think y'all are going to enjoy it. Just some good information in here. We're about out of footage. I think we probably have 2 more shows left. But I've enjoyed doing this, and I think y'all have enjoyed them from all the comments I'm getting. So thanks for tuning in. And I'm not answering that phone call. It's an unknown number. Anyway, so to the footage now, and hope you guys enjoy this. And I'll get the last few up here in the next few days, and I'll also have a report. We're down here fishing the Outlaw Outdoors benefit tournament this weekend. Sarah's on her way down. We're gonna fish. You'll see when I put up the footage. I caught a pretty nice one this morning. And I had a couple other pretty good ones come up on my bait, so I'm hoping we'll get a little lucky in the morning to catch us, 2 or 3 5-6 pound fish and maybe get a check. We'll know in 24 hours. So again, thanks for tuning in. Here we go. Let's go watch some footage. All right, so let's talk about crankbaits. So talk to me about the difference between a wide wobble and a tight wobble. You can talk about baits if you want to, or if you got secrets you don't want to tell, don't tell them. But talk about your thoughts on wide versus tight, and quiet versus rattles.
Goo.
That is a goo. Look at the line circling right there.
I told you.
Albert Collins showing off his prowess as a trash fisherman. Is it a good one? No, it's a baby goo.
That's a deduction right there.
I should put him in the penalty box.
Yeah.
He didn't even bite it. That's a good fisherman. He's just smelling of it, and Albert caught him.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that's probably what I was grasping.
So talk about crankbaits, guys.
Go ahead, Al.
Well,
Turn to me just a little bit, Albert.
My deal on a crankbait, I think typically the cooler the wetter, the less wobble I want. It just seems to me like there's a certain point when that water temperature gets in, say, the mid 60s to the low 60s.
Ooh.
That
he come off.
They want to change. Yeah, I don't know what your experiences are, but for me it seems to be mid to low 60s. They don't want as wide of a wobble as they do through the summer.
Yeah, same thing for me too. I mean, there's no doubt the hotter the water gets, the more erratic the crankbait can be. Wider wobble.
Right, right. But even in the spring, when you're cranking offshore, it's still kind of the same thing for me. That cooler water, they just don't want as wide of a wobble. I mean, you can probably still catch fish on it, don't get me wrong.
That's right.
But you catch more.
Right. There are exceptions to the rule, of course,
yeah.
but generally speaking.
In general, that cooler water, less wobble, produces more fish for me, and typically better fish.
Well, and you think about that, especially for our friends north of here. You know, as soon as the water gets cold, they're all trying to grab a wigglewort, which is, you know, a bait that wobbles unbelievably wide for a bait that size.
That and a lot of guys up there, once that water really gets cold, a lot of them go to a shad wrap, which is very little wobble.
Right.
You know, it's a tight wobble rather than the wide wobble.
Yeah. So it's like you said, there's exceptions to the rules that are probably baits as much as anything else. But well, and I say that I guess a wigglewort is a wide wobble, but it's
small profile.
It is. Yeah. It's generally a pretty small profile. Silent or rattles?
I throw rattles a lot, but I have times where I like a silent bait, especially in the fall.
Glenn, I asked you earlier, if you pull up on a spot and there's one with a wobble, one with a rattle, and one without a rattle next to each other, which one do you pick up?
Closest one to me.
So there's not a lot of preference there, huh?
No, it's not. No. It's not. Used to, we didn't have the rattles in a lot of the crankbaits and everything, and they hit it just as good as the ones with rattles. So.
You got any balsa pose crankbaits laying around the house?
I do.
I have boxes of them. All of them got the paint chipped off of them.
Yeah. I still throw a lot of balsa square bills too.
Do you? Just harder to throw?
Yeah, they're a little harder to throw, but they're a lot easier to get unhung a lot of times. They float up. They're a lot more buoyant.
Yep.
You know.
Speaking
of buoyant, Glenn, when's the last time you threw a mud bug?
Do I have to say? What time is it?
It's a heck of a versatile lure, you know it?
It is, and nobody fishes it anymore. You can't hardly find it anymore, especially the right colors. It's been a heck of a bait over the years, though. Toledo Bend was a mud bug lake.
It was the mud bug capital of the world as far as I was concerned.
It was. And most people that are fishing now, especially the younger generation, they don't even know what a mud bug is.
Right. Well, and that's what we were talking earlier. It's amazing how many old baits are now new baits. I mean, there was a period of time when if you were going to go fish around the grass shallow, you picked up a chatterbait.
Right.
And people quit throwing spinnerbaits.
Right.
And this spring, a ton of fish, or on some type of a swim bait.
Right.
This spring, there were a ton of fish caught down here on Rayburn on spinnerbaits.
Yes.
And I would imagine on Toledo Bend too.
I still fish spinnerbait a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I love a spinnerbait in spring. I mean, that's a go-to bait. I mean, especially if they're on that thing, that's a treat there now to catch them on a spinnerbait.
Mm-hmm.
Do either of y'all ever fish this stuff with the spinnerbait? This deep stuff?
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole nother story there.
I noticed Glenn looking at my big spinnerbait there.
Oh, is there a big spinnerbait laying in here somewhere? So we're gonna poke a little bit of fun at Albert here. This is Albert's tray, and we started rooting through there, and I think it's everything in there is a 6 cents, with the exception of the Whopper Plopper. But you think Albert actually throws his sponsors baits? There's your answer right there. Boy's got some 6 cent lures laying in here. You know, he really never gave us an answer on that spinnerbait thing.
It's a good versatile bait any time of the year. It'll work any time of the year in any depth water.
So, by the way, guys, there's a fair amount of footage here that you aren't going to see where they looked at me and went, nope. Nope. What'd you pick up, Albert?
Crankbait.
That 25 again?
Yeah, C25.
What's interesting is you were getting those jig and spoon bites, and we're not showing anything on the bottom.
Well, we was back there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not right now.
Well, you've dropped out here in almost 23, 24 feet of water.
Hey, Dickie don't get to see anything off the camera, does he?
No, Dickie doesn't know how to work a computer. He'd have to have somebody from his office come in there and show him.
No, I don't care. I get along with Dickie very well. We look at each other at the weigh-ins. What you got, you know.
So I'm going to tell a Newberry story here. Now this is a guy, you've not seen the footage. He calculated the speed of the tip of one of those giant wind turbines doing math in his head.
Yeah.
So that was impressive. I'll give you the other side of Dickie. we're at a Costa tournament, and he says, I need to go to the trailers. And I said, how come? He goes, because I don't have my depth finder's not working on my hummingbirds. So he tells me that, and about 2 or 3 days later, I'm in the bow with him. And I said, did you get those fixed yet? He goes, no, I got to get over there and get that fixed. So his graph in the dash wouldn't show his depth. And I said, well, is it turned on? And he looked at me kind of like a dog when you say something, you know, to a dog and it tilt their head.
Yeah.
I said, push power button. He pushed power button and the screen popped up and it says depth finder on off, and it was off.
Really? I believe that. I believe that.
So, sorry about that, Newberry. I just ratted you out right there on camera.
That's something like I do.
Absolutely, yeah. What's the Occam's razor? Usually it's the stupidest, easiest thing is your problem there.
Yeah.
I have to apologize. There's a guy down here who was fishing with his daughter one day, and I had my boat in for service, and I pulled up on him, and right off the bat one morning across about from here to that guy, across this pocket, my trolling motor wouldn't work, and I started taking the front apart and this, that, and the other, and he yelled, is your circuit breaker flipped in the back? And they had turned off my trolling motor when they were working on the boat at the shop. Oh gosh. We've not shown a lot of what Albert's been doing, but what he does on every one of these points he pulls up on, you see he's running that zigzag pattern. So he runs up on it and he runs off, and he runs up on it and he runs off. And you've repeated that pattern every time you pulled up on one of these things. Yeah,
that's just the way I do it. I mean, a lot of people parallel them, but I want to look at the different depths, you know, up and down. 'Cause sometimes I see fish going off the drop-off that you won't see when you're coming up the drop-off. You know, and I don't know why they do that.
So you've got, and we can't see it on that screen, but you've got side imaging and 3D, or what do they call it on Lowrance?
Side imaging, down imaging, and 2D.
Okay, down imaging. And then over there, you're shooting 2D, and you've got your map pulled up over there.
Right.
And you're looking back and forth between all of them, aren't you?
Yeah. And we're seeing fish down here, and I don't know what they are for sure, but.
So there were a lot of questions on the videos about, can you tell the difference with fish? Now, I use a hummingbird, so if it's a catfish, I can see the whiskers on them. But I don't think they're believing me. Your fish detection system's pretty much a jig and spoon, isn't it?
A lot of times, yeah.
And yours?
Well, like I said, I go back to the baits like the rig dink or a spoon or something like that. You know, I look for how they relate to the bottom, is to try to tell what kind of fish it is. Right. I mean, they all relate differently.
If they're stacked up, they're crappie.
Yeah, and smaller too. You know, you see a school of them. You can actually zoom in on them and count them. You know, but they're all tight together and everything. That's crappie, especially if it's around an old bent tree or something like that, some kind of brush.
When you're doing what we're doing, are you running 2D or down imaging more often?
Well, a lot of times I run both of them. Okay, and if I really want to zero in on something, well, then I go to the down scan, down imaging to really look and see what it really is.
So we have established this morning in the boat, you're better with your electronics than Albert and I are. Do you tweak them much, or do you run them out of the box?
No, I tweak them.
What do you do?
Well, I work with my sensitivity. That's a big deal. I like to have manual control on it. The contrast from Lowrance is pretty well automatic. Leave it in auto and everything. And like we were looking at earlier, we want to be able to see the hardness of the bottom. Okay, which is color line.
Now explain what you're doing with your fingers.
Well, when you've got a gray line, and now it's called a color line. And usually when say you're going along and it stays about that wide, and all of a sudden it gets wider. Okay, you're on a softer bottom. It gets narrower, you get to a harder bottom. That means there's something there. Okay, a washed out area, shales, like we were talking earlier, an old road, it's a harder surface, especially if it has any kind of rise to it. Sometimes 6 inches.
And you're seeing this on down imaging or 2D or both?
Well, both.
Okay.
I mean, all we had back then was a 2D.
Right.
You know, just the sonar. And we found most of our fish, we didn't have the sophisticated down scan and side scan like we do now. So a lot of sonar. I still use sonar, by the way. But if I see a blob or something on sonar, your down scan will really pick it out.
What else can you tell by how the fish is setting up that hints to you whether it's what we're trying to catch or not?
A lot of times if I see some scattered fish, which I'm looking for cotton balls on that down scan, okay? Big round white cotton balls. And if you start seeing, let's just say 10 fish, okay? Instead of them being right like this, they're just kind of scattered just a little bit, but you still see them on the same screen. That's a good indication of some good bass down there. So
Our drum.
Yeah, our drum. Our drum, that's true. And white bass, you know, they congregate together. I mean, they're a lot of vertical grouping of them, you know, pile, a lot of them, kind of like crappie, except bigger. So I'm looking for those individual scattered fish.
So it's a school of fish, but they are not in a wad.
Right, now that being said, they will get tighter at certain times of the day, certain cases, but I'm generally looking for, I'd rather see like a slope, I'd rather see them scattered out.
What does it mean to you when you see slashes?
I mean, just like a straight line or an arch?
Or both, either one.
Definitely fish. On sonar, okay? We look for the arches because when that fish comes into the sonar range, let's just say you're looking at him from side to side, well, guess what? It starts on one side, goes up top of his back, and then from his nose to his tail, he has an arch. So definitely looking for arches on sonar. On the side scan, you know, I'm looking for cotton balls. You know, just a little.
When you see a slash, kind of from 6 feet off the bottom up to 12 feet off the bottom, what's that tell you?
Okay, a lot of times it's a fish moving. Okay, he's coming up. A lot of times you'll see bait fish up there and you actually see that slash going up to him. And sometimes you're only getting part of that fish in your sonar range.
Yeah, people don't realize it's a cone.
That's right.
Talk about that.
Well, on sonar especially, let's just say you're in 30 foot of water. We're shooting an actual 10 foot at the bottom, 10 foot cone. What you got to do is you got to imagine like a flashlight shining on the wall. You got your immediate area there that you know it's the brightest, but then you can still see further out. So even though we're shooting at a 10 foot cone, it's shaped like an upside down ice cream cone actually, coming down and looking at 10 foot and 30 foot. But we actually can see a little further than that. When the fish comes in it and goes out of it, that's where we get our arch. If we're sitting still, we get a lot of slashes and actually horizontal lines. Nobody's moving, so they're just steadily pinging off of it. So, you know, but if you're looking around like we're island right now, we're looking for the arches and cotton balls.
I've never heard it described as cotton balls, but that's exactly what it looks like.
You look at it, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. I've heard the description of lasagna, which always gets me excited when they're piled up like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of times those aren't bass.
That's right. And a lot of times you can't tell, like we were talking about earlier on the goo. I mean, they favor bass down there sitting on the bottom. You'll see a group of 8 or 10 of them. You'll think, yeah, there it is. It's a goo. So sometimes you can't tell. That's where it goes back to fishing. You've got to spend the time to fish them, catch one of them, and see. And that's why we use different baits like the spoon and the rinky dink. We can tell what's down there.
Something to get a quick bite.
Absolutely.
Or as Albert did, snag one every once in a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Say what you just said, Albert.
I said, here's your little cotton balls right here that those fish kind of suspended out a little separate. I mean, so that's either bass or drum, and it looks like bass to me. I'm gonna make another little round here.
So he has continued making that little in and out all the way around there. I hope you can see that. But I mean, we fished stuff today. Now we've been out here for 3.5 hours.
11:52, yeah.
Yeah, so something like that. And we fished 6 or 7 spots, none of which any of us have fished in the last several weeks. And we've caught fish. Now, we hadn't caught any big fish, but we've caught fish. I mean, you can find fish doing this.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And when you find them, they're yours.
Well,
But I mean, they're fish I found.
that's what's so rewarding. You found them, and especially if you do good in a tournament, that's even more rewarding on the fish that you found.
And for me, anyway, it's my confidence builder.
Absolutely.
If I can find them here, I can find them again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's an accomplishment. We've really done something. You know, we started from scratch. We found them. We caught them. I mean, that's perfect.
Yeah, we were talking as we were riding over here about Dickie and Dickie Newberry and John Gunnels caught the biggest stringer we think we've ever heard of on Toledo, and it was in the high 30s.
Right.
But he figured them out that day.
That's right. That's right.
So he went up to an area to bush fish, but he figured out where the great big ones were setting up in those bushes, and he just started
Exactly right.
hitting the same stuff, and a hell of a day.
Yeah, and so many times we find our fish during the tournament.
Yeah.
A lot of times we really don't have the confidence going into the tournament. We have to spend tournament day actually looking and searching and figuring out a pattern. And that's happened so many times. So it's just a matter of fishing.
When you won at Toledo this spring, did you know those fish were there?
No.
I think I asked you that earlier,
I
but
had caught one in practice, just kind of looking around and everything. But I didn't know those fish were there.
did you catch those fish with your power poles down?
I don't have any fire poles.
I baited him on that one a little bit.
But I found those fish that day. And actually, I was going to another spot and someone beat me there. And so I just went past him to another spot that was close by, and they were there.
That's good karma right there.
Oh, that great tournament. Great tournament. Fishing the rinky dink.
Or spoon. I pull
Yeah,
them up.
spoon. Boy, you'll snag one of those shells down there, and that's a great place to fish when you start catching those.
Shell bed's a big deal, isn't it?
It is. I mean, the bass use them. I mean, they use them. They go in there and they crack those muscles open. I mean, and more so in post-spawn than any time of the year. So, but you've got the shell on the bottom, you got a hard bottom, and you got food for the bass too. Big bass love them.
If you fish across the spot and catch a couple shells, you're going to investigate pretty hard
Absolutely. And you may not catch any.
that day.
Yeah, that's right. And then again, you may hit the gold mine too.
There'll probably be a waypoint there either way.
Yeah, probably so.
So I don't know how to emphasize this enough, except to say that when we all sell our boats, they don't have 50 hours on them. I mean, we've idled this spot now for 15 minutes and still have not made a cast. Just looking for different, I guess.
Yeah. Steeper drop. We got a good steep drop right here. You know, and it's something I like to look at real hard. Chances are right at the top of that steep drop is a little bit harder bottom than the flatter spots. And just trying to find something that looks completely different than everything else right around it. A big stump or big log or something that really sticks out as a really hard spot. Trying to find something different.
When you see a laydown on your side imaging, will you mark it and fish it out deep?
Sometimes, yeah, I don't always, but I mean, I'd have so many marks on my depth finder I wouldn't know what was going on. But when I see one that looks bigger than normal or is laying on the drop or something looks a little special about it, I'll definitely mark it.
Especially if it's got fish on it.
Especially if it's got
It's
fish
got a few
on it.
cotton balls on it, yeah, you need to fish that.
And you can see them.
Yes.
I mean, that is one thing with my side imaging I see regularly is, and I run the 360, so I see them with the 360.
Right. There's so many big trees out there. I mean, you can spend the rest of your life
Oh.
with big trees.
Toledo Bend, are you kidding me? You can go to the back of Hurricane and fish big trees for 6 months and not fish the same tree. You know where Hurricane is on Toledo? It's down south.
Well, actually, we have a hurricane up in the land.
The lake's so big it's got 2 hurricanes.
Yeah.
Impressive.